Okay, hello and welcome everyone. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com. We're here for a new session in our Autumn 2015 BI and Reporting webcast series. Today I'm really happy to be able to welcome back Belinda Allen. She is a Dynamics GP MVP and a partner at Smith & Allen Consulting. She's also a returning speaker for us, who many of you probably already know, and it's always great to have her back. Belinda is prolific in her writing, her teaching and presenting on topics related to Excel and reporting and data management, and she's also a real champion of those tools. I also wanted to take a moment to recognize our sponsors for this webcast series. They are De Facto and Jet Reports, and we thank them for their support of MS Dynamics World. And as we get started, I just want to add that we do invite you to ask questions today. I know Belinda has a lot of material to get through in the next hour, but you can use the Q&A block to ask your questions as well. So without further delay, Belinda, let me hand it off to you.
Thank you, Jason, very much. Let me go ahead and get the screen sharing going. And okay, Jason, somehow I seem to have lost my screen share when I moved it. Are you still there?
I'm still here. Are you seeing the WebEx window?
I see. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. Sorry, WebEx. It was on me. Now you've got my screen. Okay.
Yep, now we're seeing you.
And let me move that out of the way. Okay, I apologize, everybody, for that. And again, a special thanks to De Facto and Jet Reports. The tools we're using today, if you use those reports, you can use these to kind of help guide you on how to get to the data that you want to get to. So it's a great tool for a variety of reasons. Let's start with talking about me. Jason told you a little bit about me. I am a principal with Smith & Allen Consulting out of New York City. I am a Dynamics GP partner. So I will say we are going to be using GP data, but the data we use is completely irrelevant. Our focus is going to be 100% on Power Query. So if you're not a GP person, don't worry. It's just all about how Power Query works. I am a Microsoft Business Solutions MVP, and I'm a member of the Data Platform Advisor team for Microsoft Power BI team. So I test products out, I provide them feedback, and as I get information from them, I try to pass it along. And for those of you in the GPUG, the GP user group, I am a GPUG All-Star. Now, I've been doing this a long time. I've been a BI nut a long time. This is a picture of me at a Tabletop Expo back in the, I guess, mid-90s. And as you look at the screen right here, it's kind of hard for me to kind of point there, but if you look at that screen right there, what you see is a graph or a visualization. So I've been all about BI for a very long time, and I laugh when I look at this picture because I heard a comedian once say, back when we had pictures developed, you would get to your car and you couldn't wait. You would open them up and look at them, and you would look at the picture of yourself and go, oh, look how fat I look, and then you put the picture away. And then years later you pull it out and you go, gosh, look how skinny I was. And so that's what I see when I look at this picture. So here's our agenda. We're going to very quickly define just a high-level overview what Power Query is. We're going to very briefly talk about why data cleansing is important, and we're going to spend the bulk of our time in the product doing things. We're going to be extracting data from two different sources and then cleansing data. And I will leave some time at the end for Q&A. I hope I should anyhow. All right, so let's very quickly define Power Query. And I put this up on the screen so that you could get access to it. So this pretty much came from a Microsoft website because it's important. So you have the whole URL, the tiny URL, and you have the QR code there. But Power Query is an ETL tool, if you will. It extracts data, you transform or scrub or clean your data, and then you load it into the Microsoft data model or into an Excel spreadsheet. The data model for Excel, the Power Pivot Data Model. And it's really all about cleansing and getting the data and merging it together and reshaping it. Now, when you get Office 2016, it has been renamed to Get and Transform Data, which is why at the top it says Get and Transform Data instead of Power Query. So I do want to point that out. You do need to have the proper version of Excel. You need to have Excel or Excel Standalone, Microsoft Office Professional Plus, or an Office 365 Professional version, which would be E3 or E4, to be able to use Power Query. The Power Query can be downloaded and used with Excel 2013, and it can be downloaded and used with Excel 2010 as well. Now, with Power Query, there's a lot of things that we can do, and again, this came right from the website. But the two that I've made bold and a little larger, what we're going to focus on today, we can get our data and we can merge it, multiple sources together, clean it up, match it, and prepare it so that we can use it in tools like Power BI or Power Pivot or Power View or just a regular old Excel table or pivot table. And it really can do an amazing amount of work cleansing data. And it's really valuable, I feel like, for those people who do not have access to SQL Server. So this is all built for the Excel user. You don't have to be a programmer to do these things. You don't have to have access to the SQL Server Management Studio. You just have to have access to certain tables, which your IT people or your partner can provide for you. And then you could do everything else in terms you're comfortable with using this tool. Now, this tool can be used on top of Excel. It could also be used on top of SQL Server Analysis Services, too, if that's what you want to use. So you don't have to use it directly in Excel. Now, there are a lot of data sources that Power Query uses. The two we're going to focus on today are Excel and SQL Server, but you'll notice there are a lot of them. There is, if you use SQL Server in Azure, you can access it that way. If you replicate your data in a SQL Server table storage, you can get to it. You use Hadoop. If you want to access data via CSV file or OData, all of these things will give you access. It'll give you Power Query will access your data from these points, giving you the ability to edit them the way you want to edit them. So that's kind of briefly what it is. And as we're actually doing the live demo, it'll become more and more clear what it is. And so why is data cleansing important? I do want to touch on this a little bit. And this is why a lot of people are really hesitant to let reports or let BI become self-service, because sometimes the data, there needs to be some human intervention. So let's look at these 4 dates on the screen. They all represent December 1st, 2015. But more than likely, your system, if you brought it into Excel, it may not recognize that all of these are the same thing. Or if you're trying to build it in some other reporting tool, your system may not recognize that all of these are the same things because they could be like text. Or what if they were completely empty? What if a field was left empty? What happens to the data then? And dates are another example of this. So if we look at the state of North Dakota, ND does not equal the words North Dakota. So if you had someone manually keying those in and you try to look at maybe all of your cells for North Dakota, if you type in show me all the cells for ND, it's going to exclude anything that's done with North Dakota or N dot D dot or N dot space Dakota. And so all of these things are very important when it comes to being able to report on your data right. So we need a way to cleanse the data and to get it organized. And so what we're doing is we're trying to create that where it is refreshable. So you only have to do it the one time. And then the next time you need to get an update of your data, the Power Query will repeat all the steps that you did to create this initial report. It'll repeat all the steps that tell it, okay, ND really means North Dakota, or North Dakota really means ND, or we don't want to type out the whole date. We want the date to be months and years. So it could do a large variety of work like that. Now, the final reason that Power Query is important is it is the foundation for the new Microsoft Power BI. So if you can use Power Query in Excel, you can do Power BI, period. End of story. It's exactly the same thing. So it's incredibly important to understand how it works if you want to take advantage of using Microsoft Power BI. All right, so let's, it went too fast. Let's get started. So I'm going to pull up Excel. This is just a simple Excel, and these are my notes that will keep me on target, because sometimes I get so excited showing features that I end up missing showing you everything that I wanted to show you. So I tend to write down all my notes of what I want to show you right away. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is once you assuming you're not in 2016, because it will be automatically installed with 2016. After you download it and install it, you will need to tell Excel to acknowledge the add-in. So if you go under File and you go under Options, there is something here called Add-ins on the navigation pane. And then down on Manage, we would want to come in and choose COM Add-ins, and then go, and then you'll see it appear here, Microsoft Power Query, and you'll want to check that checkbox. And then go ahead and click OK. Once you do that, it will appear on your menu bar. Now, before we dig into the product, sorry, those of you who've attended any session I ever have, you know what I'm going to talk about next. So I'm going to go into File, and then I'm going to go into Account, and then I'm going to choose About Excel. And right here, you can see what version you're in. And you could also tell if you're on one of those professional versions that'll run it. But I'm going to talk about 64-bit versus 32-bit. You want to be using a 64-bit version of Excel. And the reason for that is 32-bit only operates in a little over 2 gigabytes of RAM, all of it. So you have 5 Excel spreadsheets open, all 5 will operate in that 2 gig of RAM. Where if you're using the 64-bit, you will use all available resources on your machine. So if you have a lot of data, it will not crash out if you're using the 64-bit version. So that's incredibly important. Now, if you ask a lot of people which one to install, they're going to say, oh, 32-bit because some add-ins don't work with 64-bit. Well, I've never come across yet, knock on wood, an add-in that doesn't work with the 64-bit. And if your data is going to crash and lock the system up, what good is the add-in anyhow? So you need to go ahead and move to 64-bit. There is a piece in Power BI, Personal Gateway, that if you really want it to run well, you're going to need to have the 64-bit version anyhow. So go ahead and start getting your 64-bit version on there. All right, so what we're going to do is connect to our SQL data. So I'm going to go into Power Query, the Power Query tab, and I have this whole new ribbon. And you'll notice that I have a lot of options for Get External Data. So you'll notice if I click here, I can get to my Dynamic CRM. If some of you are on Dynamic CRM, I could get Facebook data. And this is pretty valuable because if you are wanting to compare marketing aspects, you might want to compare number of page likes and maybe the profile of some of the people who are liking your page with how a particular campaign is running. Then we have a blank query here as well. We have Hadoop. We have OData. We can get data from Azure, a lot of different Azure sources. We can get it directly from a website. And if we have time, I'll do that. But I don't know that we're going to have time for that today. We can get it from an Excel file. We'll do that shortly. But I'm going to get it from a database, and the database will be the SQL database for our example here. So I'm going to enter in the server name. You could get the server name from your IT partner or your IT person or your partner. My server, I have everything installed on my new Surface Book, and the Surface Book is named GB, so for groundbreaking. And then you'll enter in the name of your database. And this is optional if you like. You don't have to put it in. You can click OK and select it then if you want. Now, here's what's really cool. So let's say you've been given a SQL view or a SQL statement, but you don't have access to SQL Server Management Studio. You could paste the SQL statement right in here and run it right from here. You don't have to be in SQL Server Management Studio. And if you save this Excel workbook, that SQL statement will save with it. So pretty cool. But I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And I'm going to end up getting a list of all of my views and tables. Now, there are a long list, and one of the things when you're doing this in Excel, it can be quite cumbersome if you have a lot of views and tables. And any ERP system is going to have a lot of views and tables. So one of the things that we typically do is we use the best practice of naming our views view underscore something. So I could come in and just type in the word view under my navigator, and it will narrow down to those items that have the word view in them. Now, for what we're doing today, I'm going to just use account transactions, which for UGP people is a view that was created by Microsoft, so I don't even have to create my own view. And that'll be pretty much one of the only 2 or 3 things left we'll mention GP on specifically. So when I highlight it, I can see a preview of the file, so I can make sure that is indeed the one I want to have access to, and it is. So I'm going to click on Edit. And what's going to happen is the Power Query Editor will open. And now I can begin working. And I do want to mention one of the things I just told Jason before this started is ever since I began using this over a year ago, I started using it every single day. If you are a partner or consultant, you're going to want to use it every day. If you're a data person, you're going to want to use it every day because it's pretty darn powerful. Now, the first thing you'll always want to do is name the query so it's something that makes sense to you. This looks okay because you might have multiple queries in the same workbook. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this set to account transactions. Now, you'll notice that I have choose column here, and there is a little too many columns for me to see. So I could either click on choose columns here, or I could click on this table icon and then click choose columns here. And both are going to bring this drop-down list up for me. And now I can select which columns I want. This is a lot easier than doing scroll. So I want journal entry, I want series, I want transaction date, account number, account description, debit, credit, and then I want to scroll down. I want originating document number, originating master ID, originating master name, and I want voided. Now, again, I know what I'm building out here, so I'm just kind of showing you some different options. So you would select the columns you want, and now I'm able to see all of my data in here. I still could have worked with it the other way. It just would have, I wouldn't have been able to see all the rows, but now I could pretty much scroll down on my rows. And you can see now I have 11 columns and still have over 1,000 rows of data. All right. So I'm going to scroll to the right first of all, and I know I want to get rid of any transaction that's been voided. So just like in Excel filters, I'm going to click on this drop-down list, and I could either just, if there were other items showing, just unselect no. But what I'm going to do is say the text filter equals, just so you can get a feel for how some of these different options work. And I could choose from the drop-down list or manually key it in and say no. So now I've narrowed down, oops, I don't want, yeah, I want no. Okay. That way anything that's been voided will be excluded from here. So now what I'm going to do is highlight the column, right mouse click, and remove. Now, the reason why I was able to remove the columns is you'll see I've got these applied steps going on. So it keeps track of everything I'm doing. So if I were to go back up to navigation and click, you can see I'm back to seeing, oh, I have to choose columns because I have 121 columns, right? So, and then I could tag my way through. I removed certain columns. And if I wanted to even add an additional column, and I do, I could click on this gear icon, and this window will pop back up for me. So I want to add account category number as well, and I'll click OK. And now if I go back to my last step, I can see I have account category number, but I do not have the void column. So now I can typically start, as we say, I'm originally from the South. I'm cooking with gas. Okay, so now what I want to do is go to my account category number. I'm going to move that actually. I'm just going to hold my mouse down and drag and drop a column so it's after description. And I only want to get my sales discounts, and my cost of goods sold categories. This is something that's done in GP. Again, if this isn't in your system, it's not a big deal. You'll get the idea. If there was a particular column that you wanted to narrow down and only get select information on, this is how you would do it. So I'm going to unmark everything and choose those fields. I want cost of goods sold, sales, and sales returns. And let me see if I can roll down or move up a little bit so you can see the bottom of that window. Do it again. There we go. Cash, sales, and sales returns. And those are the only ones I want, so I'm going to click OK. Not cash. Cost of goods sold. What was I thinking? Okay, so now I only have those three kinds of categories available to me. And so basically I'm just looking at my sales numbers. Okay, so now if I were to look, one of the things that I can see here also is I have debits and I have credits. Maybe I just want to look at the net of these two. So up at the top there's an add column, and I could add a custom column. Now this does not use, we'll talk a little bit more about the language in a bit. This does not use Excel formatting. It uses something called the M language, M like Mary. It stands for mashup. But for adding and subtracting columns, it works extremely well. So I'll take my debits minus my credits, and then I'll click OK. And now I have this column of the net amount. So once again, I can highlight these two columns, right mouse click, and remove. You'll also notice I could remove the other columns if I want, but I want to just remove these two, because now I have the net out there as well. Okay, so let's go back and start working our way across a little bit. I have journal entry number, and if I were to click on the Home tab, I could see up here the data type it is, and right now that's set as a number. I want to change that, so I could choose the drop-down list up here and make that a text field. So that way, if I'm using it in something, it won't try to add them up together or sum them up. So I have my series, that's also text, and you do want to check each and every column. This is very important if you want to merge data together, or depending on how you want to work on your data, it could be very important. Now I have the transaction date here because it came from SQL. It's also time-stamped. I could change it up on top, but I'm going to right mouse click and choose change type and change it to a date field. So now it's only represented by a date. Another thing that I can do, if I want to track the year and the month and the quarter, I've got the column highlighted. I'll choose add column at the top. Under date, I will choose year and click year. And if I scroll to the right, I'll see the year. So you can see how easy that is to do. So I'm going to come back up and also choose month, and it'll give me the month as a number. And I'm going to choose quarter and choose the quarter of the year, and it'll give me that as a number as well. So let's finish working our way across. We have our account number, and this is set up as text, so that's fine with me. Our account description is text, that's fine. Our account category number, I just want that to say account category, so I'm going to get rid of the words number, because that's what came from my view. Then I have the originating document number, and again, I just want that to be document number because that would be like the invoice number from sales. And that is set up as text, so that's good. Then we have our customer ID. So I want to double click this and change the whole name to customer ID so that it makes sense for me, and it is text as well. And I want to change this to customer. And so that's also text. Then we have our net amount, and I want to change this to currency. And then we have our year, our month, and our quarter. Now I want all of these to be text as we come across. I don't want those adding up. So now we have added all of our pieces. We have all of our data looking the way we want it to look. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to create something that has sales in one column, cost of good in another column, and then also has my sales discounts in another column. And the reason why in GP right now, they all list out in the categories here, and I want them separated. So that's the goal that I'm trying to achieve. So what I'm going to do at the top is not click on the icon up here, but instead click on the drop-down list for close and load to. And that way I could choose close and load to. By choosing this option, I could say don't put the data in Excel, do not. Instead, just create the connection, but add the data to my data model. And I'm going to click on load. And what will happen is on the right side of the screen, this workbook query will appear, and you can see how many records are in there. And if I just hover over it, I see the preview, but I don't see anything in my Excel spreadsheet, because I want to just put the data in the data model until I'm ready for it to go to my Excel spreadsheet. Right, very cool. So now the next thing that I want to do is I want to show you, this is kind of GP specific temporarily. This is what you're seeing here. Let me get rid of that. This is basically a budget file, if you will. I'm trying to shrink it up. Just not letting me. Let's try again. There we go. So this is just a budget worksheet that comes out of Excel. Use the Excel Budget Wizard. Ooh, it took away all of my numbers, but that's okay. So I just got a lot of ones, and we're going to have a big negative budget there, but that's okay. So I have a lot of budget numbers in here, and I'm going to utilize this spreadsheet. So I'm going to close it out. And it doesn't really matter that it's in Excel only. I just want to combine something from Excel with something from SQL and put them together. So that's what we're out to achieve. So again, under Power Query, I still have this query out here, but I'm going to add one more query. I'm going to go into File from Excel, and I'm going to connect to that Excel sheet. And that's on my desktop. There it is, and I'll click OK. And now it is going to pull the data up into this navigator screen, just like we saw before. It will list all tabs, and then it will also list any tables you have. So that's the file I want, and I'll click on Edit. Okay. So as I'm looking at this, okay, first of all, the name is good. That name will be fine. Maybe I want to put budget after it. Okay. So one of the things I'm looking at, it looks like my header should be what's in row 3. So I need to get row 3 to become my header. So under the Home tab, over here in Transform, we have Use First Row as headers. And now what's on row 2 needs to be headers. So I'm going to click it again, and now what's on row 1, and I'll click it a third time, and now I have my header. So you see how easy that was? And I just kept track of all those steps as well. Okay, very cool. Let me move over to my notes. Okay, so now that we have that done, we want to get rid of a couple of extra files or extra columns. So I don't need a beginning balance, so I'm going to remove that column. And I'm going to get rid of the total and these 2 columns at the end. So basically I'm just cleaning up my data. All right, so I have my account number. So as we start working our way across, checking it again, it's text, that's good. The description's text, that's good. I want to change this title to period 1. Actually, and right now it's showing as any. I want to change it. Again, you could right mouse click and choose currency, or let me change this to 2, or you could come up here and select currency. So these are some of the options we have available to us. And I'm only going to do the first 4 months, then I'll get rid of the rest. I can't hear any of you guys, but I know you guys are oohing and ahhing. So I'm just going to highlight all these columns because these are the ones I want to keep. Right mouse click and I'll remove the other columns. So now I have my budget out here as well. So this is an easy way to do some budget. Now, I don't have my year on here, or my I have my month across the top, but I don't have my year on here. So what I want to do is just add a column, add a custom column, and I'm just going to manually type in the year. This is for 2017. So I'll just manually type in the year and say OK. And then I'm going to make sure that this is a text column, just like my other text. Okay, so now I have these 4 columns that are months. Now what I want to do is I want to basically make these a field in there as well, because in our other data file, our month was a record, with an entry in each row or each record, and I want to make that the same here, not a column, but where there's a record here that says this is for month 1, month 2, or whatever. So I'll highlight the 4 months, and then what I'm going to do under transform is choose unpivot the columns. And now you're going to notice I have an attribute and a value. So I'm going to get on the attribute, that was actually what ended up happening. So I'm going to call this month, and then I'm going to make sure that's text. And I'm going to get rid of the value altogether. And so now I have my budget done. So let's close and load this budget to our data model as well. So now we have account transactions and we have budgets. And they come from 2 different data sources, and they're both refreshable. That's the cool thing. Now, the budget will refresh off that spreadsheet, but the account transactions will refresh across our SQL. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this. And again, there's a couple ways I could go in and edit this. If I were to have just highlighted it over it and saw the preview, I could click on edit here, or I could have right mouse clicked and edit. And now I'm back to the same screen. Now, I told you a little bit about it uses the language M for its formulas. So I want to take a quick look at the language, because what we're going to do is make a copy of it. So under View, I'm going to go to Advanced Editor, and then here is the screen where the M language could be typed in. And basically, this is every applied step in the M language. Now, you don't have to know the M language. I don't know the M language, and I've been using this for over a year for a lot of things. But I'm going to just highlight it and choose Copy, because what I want to do is replicate all this work without having to do all the work again. So let's do that now. I'm going to go back to File and Close and Load. And now what I'll do under Power Query is I'm going to use that blank query option. And it's just going to give me a blank query. So I'm going to call this one Cost of Goods Sold. Always name it first, because if you have 4 queries out there called Query 1, Query 2, Query 3, and Query 4, it won't do you any good when you start working. So now I'm going to go into View, back to the Advanced Editor, and you see it's blank. I'm going to just paste in all of that work and then click Done. And now it replicates all the work that we just did in this Cost of Goods Sold. So this time what I'm going to do under Account Categories is I'm going to come in and get rid of Sales and Sales Returns and just make this Cost of Goods Sold. That's all I'm doing, is just making this Cost of Goods Sold. And now what I can do is delete the account category body, or column. I can remove that, because this is only reflective of Cost of Goods Sold. And I'm going to come over to the net amount, and I'm going to name it Cost of Goods Sold. I'm going to leave everything else about it the same. Just do that. And what I'll do now is go back to home, close and load to, because this is a whole new query, just to the data model. And now you can see the query is loading here. And now there's only 531 transactions. I'm going to open this query back up. This time I right mouse clicked and edit. And again, under the account category, I'm going to get rid of cost of goods sold. All right, very good. Now I just have sales and sales returns. So I'm going to remove this column. So essentially what I did is now I have two exact queries that are just pulling in different categories. And what I want to do now is put those together so that I have one big data file that has both of them. The difference is there'll be two different columns, one for sales and one for cost of goods sold. That's why I broke it down like that. Now, there are a couple other ways you can do it, but I'm just trying to show you some of the benefits of doing it this way. So I'm in Query Editor in the account transaction one, which is only showing sales and sales returns. And so what I'm going to do is on Combine, choose Append Query, and the Append Query window will open. And then I'm going to choose that cost of goods sold one and then click OK. I'll use the budget one in a few minutes. And now, if I scroll to the right, you'll notice that I have my sales account and I have my cost of goods sold. Now, if there's sales, that means it's not a cost of goods, and that's why it's null. So I want to just do a find and replace. I'll highlight the column, and then under Home, under Transform, I'll replace the values of null to 0. I'm going to do that for both columns because there will not be a value in sales and cost of goods sold on the same row. It'll only be one or the other. And so this will take care of that. And that way I'll have a 0 there instead of a null record when it gets to Excel. Maybe I also want to add, let me drag that over here. Maybe I also want to add a gross margin column. So what I can do is come up and choose to add a column, add a custom column. I'll call it gross margin. And if I scroll down, here's my sales minus the cost of goods sold. I'll click OK. And there's my gross margin. I'm going to drag it after cost of goods sold. And then I'm going to make sure that it is set to currency as well. So now I have sales, cost of goods sold, and gross margin. Now, I'm realizing that my sales are showing up as negative numbers, and I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is come right here and highlight the sales, and I'm going to choose this under Add Column, this standard option, and I'm going to say multiply it times a -1, and then I'll click OK. And now everything in the sales column will be multiplied times a -1. And that did not take, why not? Let's look. Okay. And all we have to do is delete that. Maybe before we add the custom column, we'll do add a custom column. We'll try doing it right here. Add custom column, multiply. Yes, I'm sure I want to insert a step there. I want to multiply it times -1. I'm not sure why that is not taking. Let me go before the merge. Maybe that's what's holding me at the append. So I'm going to come right in here and try it one more time. Go to Sales, Standard, Multiply. Yes, I want to insert the step. -1. Click OK. I'm not going to try it again after this. It does work. So we'll pretend that it worked there. That's fine. It won't change the effect, but it does work. It's very cool how it works. So actually, I might could try it right here. On the gross margin. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. Okay, so now I have all this data. So if I were to go back to home and close and load to, I have all of the data out here. I still have the same number of rows because it is adding in all the original data set that I had. And if I want to use it, I could do a couple things. I could choose to right mouse click and choose to load to. And now I can load it to the table in Excel. And I'll click load. It'll create another worksheet and put the data in right here. The other option I could have done is gone to data and then shows existing connections. And I would have been able to use create a pivot table right from the Power Query. So now I'm at a point where I could easily create a pivot table right from this data that's located right here. By just doing it the normal way that you would typically do a pivot table. So I'm just going to grab account number and our skewed gross margin and put it in right there. Oh, there's my field. I created a new field. That was what was going on. Okay, so here's my field. And so this is essentially our gross margin that we have going on. So you can see it's pretty easy and very cool to utilize. So what I want to do now, under my Power Query is, I'm going to go through and edit this again. There's one more thing I want to do before we wrap up today. And what I'm going to do is do a quick comparison here. We have our data here. I'm going to group it together, and then what I'm going to do is put it with my budget. So I want to be able to take all the transactions here by account number, by year, and by period, and group them with budgets. And this is easily done. If I go to transform, here's a group by option. And in the group by option, here's where you tell it to group by. I want to group by a couple things, so I'm going to add 4 out there. I don't want to group by journal entry number, but I do want to group by, oops, I forgot to do something real fast here. What I want to do is duplicate my account number real fast. I'm just going to click duplicate the column. And the reason I'm going to duplicate it, and drag it back out here to my account description, I want to show you something else. Come on. I'll put it there for a second. Now we'll move it. I don't necessarily need to do this. I just want to show you the merge feature. I'm going to highlight both of these, and I'm going to merge these cells together. So I could right mouse click and merge, or click merge right up here under the transform section. These are both text fields, and I could tell it what separator I want to use. And I'm going to add my own by doing a space dash space, and I will call it, I'm going to leave it merged because it's only going to be used for the grouping. So now I have a field that has the account number and the account name. That'll help identify it without altering the account name at all, or account number at all. So I'm going to go back to my group. I'm going to group by 4 things. The first one will be by that merged field. So that's the account number field. The second one that I'm going to merge by is going to be the year. Then I'm going to group by the month. So I've merged year and month. And actually, I don't need that. So that's fine right there. Okay. And then the columns that I want to create. Now there are 2 columns I want to create right here. So I have, well, we'll do 3. No, we'll do 2. Sorry. Okay, the first new column will be sales. And I wanted to sum the rows. and that column will be my sales column. Then the next column I wanted to do is cost of goods sold. Again, I want it to be summed as well, and I will choose the cost of goods sold column. So here are my columns, and now here they are grouped together. So now they're definitely unique. So again, we would want to double check our columns here. And at this point, one other thing I wanted to show you, and again, I'm just showing you this because I think it's really cool, is we could also split by delimiter. So I'm going to split these two columns together, and you could say leftmost, rightmost, or whatever. I'm going to do it at the rightmost, and it's going to be custom, and the custom I used was space dash space, and I'll click OK. And now it's taken these back into two fields. So I have account and I have description. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Oops, it looks like we had a couple of space dash spaces, so that didn't work out well for everything. But let me do this again. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. And I want to change this one. So, well, we'll delete it. Oops. Look what I did. I changed my whole grouping. Bear with me while I do it again. Sorry. This time I'll keep it straight. I'll do merged, account, year. This will keep us from unsplitting, and month. This is so exciting, I had to show it twice. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm not going to undo it this time. All right, because we have the account number, but, well, I guess I can, and if it messes up, then we'll delete it out anyhow. So I'll split the column. Why didn't I just do some of these have dashes in them? They do. That's what the deal was. So what I want to do then is I want to split at the leftmost space, and that'll take care of it. There, that split it out fairly correctly. Then I could have also done it again on the leftmost space, but I'm going to just change this one to description, and this one to account, and let's check our formatting of these. So text, we have this. Let's go ahead and split this again. I'm going to save myself some grief and copy that. And we will split the columns again by the leftmost dash. Now this may seem like it's a lot of extra work, but it really isn't, because you're only doing it the one time, remember, and then it's completely refreshable. So let's make that column. I'll just leave that as description. That's fine. That's text. Account number is text. Oh, we could get rid of that one. Then we have year, month. These should also be text. And then we have currencies. These should be currencies. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to close and load this, because this time what I want to do, let's just go to a fresh sheet. What I want to do this time is I want to merge these two together. So now this is only down to 90 rows, and then we have a budget of 316 rows. And so what I'm going to do is under Power Query, I'm going to choose the option to merge. And unlike before where we had the exact same column structure, this time I'm just adding columns to an existing one. So I'm going to take my account transaction that has 90, and I'm going to add some additional columns to it. And I'll add the columns from the budget. So I have account number, I'm holding my control key down, year and month. So now you can see there's a 1, 2, and 3. So in that order, I would want to do the same thing down here. So the data types are the same and they're in the same order. So 1 equals 1, 2 equals 2, 3 equals 3, and so forth. And it shows me how many have matches. And I'm going to go ahead and that's because this is only for year 2017, and you can see this includes other years as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now I have this new merged one, actual sales with budget, which is misspelled, but that's okay. So I have all of the columns from my account transaction, but I have this one here, this weird one called new column with the double arrows. If I click on this, I can now choose the columns I want. Now I don't need description again because I already have description. So I'll take that out. I don't need account again. I don't need year, and I don't need month. And I guess well, you know what? We'll leave them all out there. And I'm going to use the original name, except for account. We should have our budget on here. We do not. So let me go back for a moment. I'm going to just close this out and not save it. Let me look at our budget over here. Oh, I've removed a column somewhere with our numbers. Oh, that was our budget. Hello. I thought that was actually our numbers. Okay, so important safety feature, don't blow your budget numbers out. But you see how easy that was to get back because that was just stuff. That was not part of my plan, that was just lucky. Lucky that the product's better than I am. All right, so we'll do this again, and we'll select these 3. And the cool thing is I have these in the same order, so I can do the exact same thing. And we'll click OK. That one threw me out there. All right, so now I'm going to come in. I'm going to unselect everything except for budget, and I want to not use the original column name as the prefix. So otherwise it would come over as like 2000 sales budget, whatever, and we don't want that to happen. Okay, actual sales with budget. All right, so now we have our budget numbers. Let's come through and make this a currency. All right, and let's replace, this is just a Belinda thing, those nulls with zeros. And we are at the end, so we managed to get everything in. That's pretty cool that I wanted to. All right, so we have all of this in. Neato. Now what we could also do while we're here is add in, let's go ahead while we're here and that was why I kept adding columns instead of transforming. That's why the multiplying times -1 did not work. Hello. All right, so now I've got my cells done properly. So what I'm going to do is come into add column. I want sales minus cost of goods sold minus budget. So we'll call this one variance. So I have sales minus cost of goods sold minus budget, and click OK. And now that's done. This time I'm just going to click close and load to, and it'll put it in a pivot table for me. Great. And now that I have that done, I can create a pivot table very easily with this. So, summarize with the pivot table. not sure. Oh, I have errors in it. What are the errors? Probably that description column. Yep. So here we are. Not sure what I did on that one, but you get the gist. So I did something a little bit weird, and it's because I have people watching me, I'm sure. But it's pretty cool what Power Pivot can do. So I do have 5 more minutes, so I do want to kind of open up to questions. But before I do, I just want to address one more thing on the M language. One of the things that you can see on the left side of the screen here is this is the Excel format for year, the formula for year, right? We're all comfortable with that. Equals year, and then whatever field or value you want to do. Notice how M is different. Even though the adding and subtracting of columns with numbers were the same, there is a difference in the formula. So this link it's all the same, QR, tiny URL, or the full link will provide you with the ability to get access to the M language. So that being said, since I've made a whole bunch of boo-boos on this one, which is not super great, let's open up the questions. Do you see any questions, Jason?
Yeah, there are a few questions that have come in, and for anyone else who maybe has them, please enter them into the Q&A now. So we'll start with something that came in earlier, the difference between Power BI and Power Pivot.
Okay, that's a good question, and probably should have addressed that. Power BI is one of those things in the world of Microsoft that has multiple meanings. Power BI is a series of a collection of tools and services that work for Excel and or SharePoint. The same tools work for both, or the SQL Server Analysis Services, actually, in SQL. And there is also a Power BI app. And the Power BI app is a web app and a cloud app. Now, as I mentioned, let me find that screenshot. Here's what it looks like when you're in the app itself. As I mentioned, Power Query is the foundation for this. So Power Query is how the data gets massaged, edited, cleansed, organized, however you want to call it. Power Query is the basic for creating these visualizations. But this is a separate application, although Power Query is part of the Power BI tools and services that do fall under the bigger Power BI umbrella. So I know that's clear as mud, but it is two things, a collection of tools and services for Excel, and the same tools work for SQL Server Analysis Services, and it is this app. It is both of these things together. I hope that answers that okay.
All right. Another question that we have here, can you connect multiple databases in one connection? For example, in a scenario where they deal with more than a single database for their financials.
Yes, that's a fabulous question, and I'm going to give one BI or one GP slant here. So if you're a member of GPUG, if you look up the last magazine that came out, I did an article on this. Yes, you can. So just like I connected to Excel, what you can do, let's say you wanted to do an age trial balance for looking at payables in 3 companies. And you wanted to be able to look at it across all companies or just for one company, doesn't really matter. What you could do is create the connection, create one query that looks at one company, create another query that looks at the other company. Just make sure the columns are the same, like we did here, that they're organized in the same structure, and then you can merge them together, hopefully more successfully than I did here. I'm not sure what I did on the spot, or you could append them together, and I did that successfully. The account transactions, remember when I just looked at sales, and then I looked at cost of goods sold? So you could make them the same, put them all in one area there. What I would do before you merge them together, though, is I would create a column called company. And you, just like I put the year in on the budget, where I just put in a text field, you could put in a text field for a custom column text field. Well, we'll do it real fast right here. Why not? So let's pull this up. And if this was for one particular company, maybe this did not pull over. I might figure out my error. Nope, I can figure that out right there. Okay, so one of the things that we could do if we wanted this to include our company in here is if we add a column, just add a custom column, we'd call it company, and you do this for each company, then you would enter in the name of the company. So my company would be like Smith and Allen Consulting, and I might need to put brackets around that. Let's look and see. Yep, or quotation marks rather. There we go. Or you could abbreviate it if you want to. Okay, so, and then that way all the records for this one will have Smith & Allen Consulting. And then when you repeat it again for a different company, then all of the records would have the other company. And then when you append them together, then now you have a field or column that just says company. And then you can identify the company. It is possible that, let's see, under source, if we could, you could probably copy the query information just like I did and just change the company here if the same files exist. Or under, let me go all the way to the bottom, or if you were looking at the M query, this might be an area where you want to just come in and change the database right here. That's perfectly fine as well, because you can see the source, SQL Server database source. That's my server name, GB, and that's my database name. And you could do the same as there as well there. But yes, it's an excellent option for that, because then you could utilize a slicer for the company. So you could very easily have, if you build one age trial balance, you could have a trial balance that looks at all companies, just one company, just these three companies, or whatever you want to look at. Excellent question. Thank you for asking that.
All right. When you change the account transactions query in Power Query, it does not change anything in the original view in SQL, does it?
No, it does not. We are using a read-only version, and this is what makes it valuable for the Excel user, because the Excel user is typically not the SQL person. So the SQL person is secure and keeping their data straight, and you are secure in knowing that you're not going to mess up anything in the company. So this is a very good thing. I do suggest using views, because if you get some, and that means you probably got to get somebody to build the view for you. But if you get the view, it's easier for your IT department to manage security, giving you access to it. And on top of that, it is, you'll know that the data is organized appropriately. If you're joining tables together is a bit of a development issue, and if you don't do it right, you'll end up with a lot of mess, a lot of invaluable data that just prints out garbage. So you want to make sure it's done right. So yes, it does not write back into SQL. Good question.
And can the results of a query be posted back to a database?
The results of a query are going to end up in the data model, and in this case, the one I'm using happens to be Excel. If you were using SQL Server analysis services, you probably could write it back into a database. I have not tried that, but you probably could. Just by virtue of putting it in Excel, you could then import the Excel transactions into your SQL Server, as part of your SQL Server DTS, you could do that. So there's a way of that to manually import them in. But if you wanted them to happen automatically, I believe you would be able to do that. I'm going to give that about a 80% confidence level that you could do that if you're using SQL Server Analysis Services and you were trying to write it into like a separate table altogether. Yeah.
So a comment here from someone regarding Excel 2016. It looks like Power Query is built into the data ribbon in Excel 2016, and there's no separate add-in to be enabled to use Power Query.
That's correct, and it is called Get and Transform. That's correct. You only have to download for 2010 or 2013.
All right, we have one more question here, so I'll make a final call. Also remind folks, please look for the survey as you depart today. It'll just take 15 or 20 seconds. It'll give it'll give Belinda some feedback on how today's session went for you. So please do be on the lookout for that. But last question here is regarding date formatting. So if you wanted to do a date format that was just like DDMMYYYY, how would you do that? And I guess a related question, why would the year and the numbers be text?
Okay, so let me start with the second question first. The reason why I'm making them text is that if, particularly if I plan to do any kind of group by, it's not going to try to add up the values any. And then also when I bring them into Excel, if I use them in pivot tables, then they come over formatted not as a number, so it's not going to try to add them together or sum them. It's going to know that that's actually a value. And that's why I tend to. You don't really have to format them as text, but I think it's going to save you a little bit of grief in the long run if you're formatting in Excel, if you do bring them over in as text instead of a number, because it will not try to add them up or sum them up. So that's why I do that. Now, as far as formatting from a date, we do have a couple of other options as well. So let me, you know what, let's quickly do something here. I'm going to do one more quick connection, and this will, and Jason, I'm fine to stay on and answer a few more questions depending on your schedule, and if questions exist. So let me connect, and I'm going to select the account transaction again. I want a fresh one this time. Okay, that I haven't garbly-gooped up. Okay, so we'll just edit and load that. Just need to give it a different, oh, it already gave it a different name, that's fine. This time I'll choose columns here so you can see it is the same. I'm only going to select a few columns. I probably didn't even need to do that. Actually, I don't. So let me just come in and highlight these columns right here. These are the only ones I want. All right. So let's talk about date formatting a little bit. And let's move to the end so that we'll see what's going on here. Now, there are a couple things that we can do when we format. So if we go to Add Column and I go to Date, I get a couple, there are some formats we can do for creating the month the way you want the month created. So it's a matter of putting it in a text format, and I hope I get this right. So I'm going to duplicate this column first of all, and actually let's not do it that way. Now let me remove that. That's what I get for thinking while I'm doing. Let me first just change this to the date by itself. Okay. So we have this date field here. All right. So I want to create a new column. And let's call this one month. So again, we have this column, date, month. Now you're going to see me struggle in just a minute here. But I want to show you a couple things that we have that we could do as far as date goes. All right, so we have our month here. Now, if we were to, this is just the number of the month here. So we need to change this formula in order for it to appear as the text we want it to appear as. So give me just a minute here. Let me get my cheat sheet out, if you don't mind. Put that up here. I always have to go back. And one of the feedback that I've been giving them along and along is I'm not particularly pleased, and they want more examples from me, so I'm trying to work them out. So it's unfortunately up to me now, but they want, I don't like their examples of how some of the date pieces work. So, and that's just kind of a Belinda thing. So give me just a moment here. Oh well, let me just pre-hand it a shot here. We'll give it a try. So I'm going to come in and choose date again, and we'll call it month name. So formatting the month name is not quite as simple, because what you have to do is do a text. I think, let me see. I don't want to guess. This is how I end up doing it every time. I've got a book on M language and I'm reading it now. So Power Query formulas and text function and let's date. I don't think date's going to do it. I can never remember exactly what it is. We'll try this. Month. I don't think that's it. We'll try it. Looks like it's right, but it's not. Okay. So yeah, there's a formula that you got to get the formula exactly right. And obviously I do not have it exactly right. So this text dot date, yeah, there's some formula, and my apologies, maybe I need to do this. I always have my cheat sheets in front of me normally, and this is why I have them in front of me, because I am not completely well versed on it yet. Okay, it is something to this effect. I will have to sit and dig it up and look it up for you. But it is something to this effect. So it is very different than what you would typically think of. Let me try. Right that way. You can see it's not quite as logical as it would seem. So I'm going to have to pause on that. Sorry. Perhaps I can pull up my, I'm trying to find my notes where I updated it. Is there another question in the meantime?
Yeah, there are a couple other questions that have come in. So one person suggesting it's format.date.
They suggested what? I'm open to suggestions. What?
Format.date. I'm not sure.
No, that won't do it. That's not it.
So here's kind of a question that's a little bit off on another topic. Minimizing security risks. When you're querying a database in the cloud, are there any ways that you would recommend people minimize security risks?
Yeah, and one of the best ways for that is utilizing views, having people hit views, and then in SQL Server you grant the access to the views. And I think if you grant access to the Windows user instead of to your ERP user, I think that's the easiest way to control it. So you can give individuals, it doesn't take that many views, really and truly. So if someone has access, for example, to sales information, then you could create a sales view and then give them just those people who have access to it. You could utilize groups in SQL to make granting security easier. But I think the easiest way to and have good security in place on it is by utilizing views and having people access the data via a view. I think that's going to be the best bet.
Okay, we are, I think, just about at the end here. I mean, there was a question on creating a date from 3 text fields if that reflected the month, day, and the year. Do you
Yeah,
have
you could
any
do that.
suggestions?
Yeah, that's very easy to do. I've actually done that quite a few times for people. I was trying to see. I finally got up something that might show me the date. One. No, okay. Okay. So let me just cancel that out. So, and delete that. All right. So yeah, so we have like the month right here. And let's say we only have the month and the date. So let me also come in and pull in the date. I will get that formula, Jason, for you as well, so we could put with the, or maybe upload the slide deck with it in there. So, okay, so date, top day. See, and I could tell, and there's proof for me doing that. Okay, so we have the month, day, and year, or month and day here. So let me also just come in and change this and put the year in. So let's say you had these three fields here. Let's even go so far as to say, let's only include January and February. Let's go so far as to say that these are written in words. So I'm going to come in here and replace values. If it's a 1, it'll be January. Oh, first thing I have to do is make that a text. And the reason why I have to make this a text is because I'm going to turn it into a text. And so it needs to start from a text if I'm going to replace value. I can't replace a number with a text. So I can replace the 1 now with January. And now I can come in and replace the 2. And again, see, it's still tracking these steps along the bottom here with February. All right, so now I have these done. So what I can do is, because the traditional way we would format the date would be the month, space, date, comma, space, year. So what I want to do is I'm going to do these in 2 batches. So I'm going to take the month and the year, and I'm going to merge these 2 columns, and I'm going to use a custom separator. I will use a comma and a space. Now the comma was out there and the space was out there, but the comma space was not out there, and I did that backwards. There should have been a space between those 2. I do know how a month goes. I just got addled because I'm frustrated. All right, so let's see, merge column. So we'll just do the space here. And now we could take this, and you're going to find this really fascinating because I'm going to show you, wrap it up in a nice bow at the end. And we'll do another merge here. And this time we have that custom one of a comma and a space. And so now we have this date field. So I created a date field from here, but let's say this is what your date field looks like. Then one of the things that I can do is take this and come back in a different way. Let me get rid of the 2 replace values. See, so I had the full date there. There's a lot of things you could do with dates that are pretty darn powerful. And so now I have the month, day, and the year. So I could combine these all together. Let me make them all text first. There's a reason I want to do that. You'll see it why afterwards. So I've got them all in as text because I want to be able to just use this merge and put a slash in between it without it thinking it's trying to divide. So there. So there's our date. That's all fine. Now we can easily just transform this into a date. So we could take a text that's formatted as a date and turn it into date. So we could take any kind of numbers and you could play around with them all you want and it'll track it so that it's all repeatable, because you don't always get the data exactly the way you want to get the data. And sometimes the dates are crazy. Sometimes they'll have time stamps on them. Sometimes they won't have the year on them. And you could easily work on making them by using the merge, using the split, switching back and forth between the text and numbers. And this is doing it this way and staying out of the formula way like I was trying to do. Doing it this way is very unprogrammer, undeveloper type of work. So it's easy for me to, as an Excel user, without thinking in terms of being a developer, edit and transform this data without having to be a developer. And I can do it just thinking in terms of SQL. So what if it takes me 10 extra steps? I only have to do it this one time. And then after this one time, it's done. So by that I mean like this account number. If I wanted to extract the 4 digits in the middle, sure, there's some commands you could do that, but all I have to do is go, okay, so I want to keep this intact, so I'm going to duplicate the account number. I'll duplicate the column, and then maybe I will split the column by the dashes. And I want each occurrence. And now, boom, I have the one column I want. And what does it matter that it took me those extra steps? It doesn't matter at all, because the next time I need it, it'll be replicated. And if, again, it's nice and easy for me to use. So that's the whole point about this, is it gives the Excel users the ability to scrub their own data and do it themselves, so that the next time they use it, it'll be completely refreshable. You notice there's a refresh here, and then, you know, once it's in Excel, you saw the data. Let me go ahead and just close and load this. You saw the data, it updates here. If I were to click on refresh here, all of these, well, once that finishes, go to data, I'm going to do refresh all. So they're all going to go back and refresh, all 4 of them. So, and they'll do it in the order they need to do it in. So it's a very good thing. You know, it's just so much easier than trying to get someone to do the development for you. You just have to think logically. You know the steps you want it to happen, so you just need to make it happen in the system by cleaning up your data. So I hope that all of you will take and try playing with this with some of your data, because there's some amazing things you can do just with a simple pivot table at a minimum if you utilize this. And if you learn this, then you already know how to do Power BI. And it's free. There is a free version of it. So I encourage you to go out and use that as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Belinda. I think we are at the end of our question queue now, and someone did say that was really cool what you just demoed.
Yeah, oh, I have the formula up. Let me put it on the screen. I knew I'd find it. So it took me long enough, right? I'm just going to put it in Excel so you guys could see it. And I knew I'd find it. I was so close. I was doing it backwards. It is date to text, and then your field, and then in that way we'll put the whole field in. So that's how you do it, date to text. So it's similar to the GP formatting of text, but instead we have that date dot at the beginning, and then, and well, that's pretty much it. So, okay, thank you, Jason.
Sure. Well, I think we'll start wrapping up here. Thanks again, Belinda, for taking so much time to show everyone around Power Query and all these different capabilities of it and answering so many questions.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
Great. We did record today's event. A couple of people have already asked. We'll be sending that out to everyone who attended and who registered for the event. I guess, Belinda, you said you also have some slides that you can allow us to share as well for people to download. Okay, great.
And I'll put this on it.
Excellent. And with that, we are going to wrap up. Please do look for that survey. Oh, if you are interested, there's also I'm just going to make a quick plug. In just 35 minutes from now, we have another session coming up. If you have to deal with the Affordable Care Act and reporting and compliance related to that, I highly recommend you check out the session coming up at 2. I'm going to just post a link to that before we close out in the chat for anyone who's interested. With that, we are going to wrap up today's session, stop the recording, and just say thanks and have a great day.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everyone.